A warm hello to everyone. I'm Raga Olga de Silva, or Totally Out Now as you know me. I'm the co founder and director of Speaking Minds, India's largest international speakers bureau. Welcome to the other side. As a leading expert in the content curation space, I continuously explore ways of bringing stories and thought leaders who are disruptors. Today, I have one such person, Lisa Ray. Lisa has shared a journey in her debut novel, Close to the Bones, and what a journey it has been. Modeling, acclaimed performances, public speaking, columnist, author, television personality, and on, and so much more. But what stands out for me is Lisa the writer, Lisa and a gift for words, Lisa and a narrative and her inspiration. What is on the other side of this? Let's explore today. I remember reading recently where she shares, I'm a writer who occasionally acts. I found that super interesting. So let's find out. Do join me in welcoming Lisa Ray.
Hi.
Hello, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, Raga. Thank you. That was a very warm introduction. Thank you
Warm.
so much. And thank you for highlighting my relationship with words, which is actually one of my most enduring and passionate relationships and long-term relationships as well.
I love it. When I started talking to you and we started having conversations, I had such a different perspective of you. Of course, I knew you were always a writer, but your
Mm.
words. I read your book. I've read all your columns now, and I think it's like poetry. Your narrative is like so deep. And my first question to you, Lisa, is where do these words come from?
That's asking a magician about his alchemy. It's a strange alchemy that takes place, I think, with any creative endeavor. The thing is that I think that, some people are visual and some people are, tactile, some people are oral, or, it's more about music, sounds. I'm definitely not that. I'm completely tone deaf. So I honestly believe that my one and only gift really is words and writing. And I can't explain it. It's been a connection that was planted in me probably when I was very young. Part of it is my bloodline. I'm half Bengali, and I think that in culturally speaking, Bengalis pride themselves in their connection to words and literature, of course. And I did have a very strong Bangla kind of influence when I was young and spent a lot of time in Calcutta growing up. But also, I just naturally, was attracted to words. Being an only child as well, I spent a lot of time alone on this purple shag rug. Remember, it was the 70s, right? And writing in a diary and trying to express myself, trying to take sort of everyday experiences and process it and express it. And I wrote little novels, and it was my way of connecting, I guess, because I was introverted, and believe it or not, I continue to be an introvert. And I mean, this might beg of me to explain what is an introvert in my words, and an introvert versus an extrovert. So an extrovert, I believe, derives energy from people. An introvert can appear to be have extroverted qualities like me, and it simply is because I've been thrust into a business which requires me to be putting myself out there. So I put on the mask, and I can appear to be have extroverted qualities, but I get drained when I'm around a lot of people or crowds, and I'm not one for small talk as well. And it's probably worked against me many times in my life that I like to sort of cut to the chase, and I'm not blunt. I try to be kind, but I don't really suffer fools
Yeah,
also.
it's
Uh,
okay.
Gladly. And so, all of this has informed who I am, and that's why for me, writing and using words to express my messages today is really, really essential. But it's also something I love. I find it delicious. like a
Oh,
chef
wow.
in the kitchen, working with his ingredients. I find it, I'll labor over one line, which I did actually with Close to the Bone as well. Sometimes it was just getting that one turn of phrase correct. And it is labor, but it's also, it's also delight. It feels like a personal calling.
Sure. So writing is something that's a piece of you that you basically give to the world, right? That's what they say. So in
I don't
your,
know.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah,
here's the one
okay,
thing,
okay, okay.
because I don't know that it's always about giving it to the world. Because you see, I've been writing my whole life since I was a child, and it just so happens that I recently published my first book. But does that make me a writer? Simply because now I've actually published something that can be consumed by people? Or are you a writer when you simply continuously express yourself through words? Hmm?
So you're
I mean, it's
saying that
something to ponder, right?
interesting. You're
I
making the
because
point.
because
Yeah.
labels are very, as you know, Raga, labels
Yes.
are very
Yes.
dangerous, right?
Right. Right.
To sort of conceive of someone as being a writer or an artist purely connected to their output, I think is actually shortchanging a lot of people as well.
No, very interesting. I'm going to reflect on that as a writer myself. A lot of
Hmm.
people come to me and say, "Can I share these words? Which, if I've written poetry, may I share
Hmm.
these words?" And my response to them typically is, "They have been written. They're out there. Now they don't belong to me. I don't own them. So you do what you want to do with them." Is that something
Right.
that you have to think about as well?
Oh, yes. I mean, having said everything that I just said, of course, there's a particular kind of a satisfaction and fulfillment in knowing that your words are reaching people and successfully landing with people, that they're resonating with people. And I think the greatest compliment, of course, is if somebody wants to share your words. But, I like to think, I have actually this notion about creativity, and in particular ideas and writing, and going back to what you were asking about, where does it come
Sure.
from, because it is a little mysterious. I can't actually break it down, and often I'm not that hung up on sort of the mechanics of how things work. I don't think that way. I'm more into the sort of the mystical side of how things appear, and I'd love to create more a mythology around that than get into the sort of nitty gritty of it.
Sure.
But having said that, there's this interesting notion, and I did read this book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because she put into words something that I have been feeling very strongly. And this idea that ideas, inspiration, the plot of a book, and even words are actually sort of sentient beings, that they are actually, you know, sort of circulating around us in this other dimension. And it's up to us to just receive them.
Sure.
So there's this idea that, it's about keeping your channel open, and it's about receiving. And I do find that, I don't know if you find this also as a writer, is sometimes you'll be sitting and you'll be laboring over something, right? You'll be sitting at your computer and sweating and cringing and almost on, the verge of tears. And then I stop, I shut my laptop, I get out of my house, and I take a walk. And what happens on that walk is some mysterious alchemy, because the correct phrase or a new direction or fresh inspiration just
Sure.
lands,
Sure.
right? And it's because I'm not contracting, it's because I'm expanding and I'm open to receiving, Now,
Sure.
having said all of this, it's a lot of labor to write a book as
Yeah. Of
well.
course.
It's
Of
not,
course.
this is not discounting the labor. This is not discounting showing up all the time, every single day, but it's more a sort of a quality of being that I'm talking about, a quality
Sure.
of openness, of allowing, because we can't also plan everything in creativity. That's sort of not how it works, whether it's
Yeah.
acting or writing for me. You might have a plot, but sometimes when you're sitting there, something will just happen, something will appear on the page. And then you have a choice, of course. You can either stick to the original plan, or you can say carpe diem,
Yeah.
and I'm going to actually follow this thread wherever it's leading me. And the one great thing about this is it's a great antidote to the whole creative ego, to this whole sort of, look at me, I'm such a great creator. And that's a little bit of a dangerous place for any creative to fall into.
Right.
So I try consciously to keep myself humble. I love getting feedback on my book, and I've been extremely gratified that Close to the Bone has had an incredible reception. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I keep reminding myself, that you're the vessel for these words,
Sure.
and that's maybe my conscious decision. And even on the next book that I'm working on, I try to say to myself, I express gratitude for the opportunity, and then I say, allow me to sort of be a vessel for some sort of a message.
Sure.
And again, it's not necessarily in the plot, but in the way that you describe the narrative or the or the
Sure.
or the words that you choose.
So is this partly or fully from being such a spiritual being yourself, right? You've been on this journey for such a long time, and what a journey! Like I said when I introduced you. So does this come from? Where does it come from? And sorry, and that's where I'm trying to get at, because
Yeah.
your words fascinate me. Which your words are you for me, right? But where does it come from? Is it because of your spiritual experiences that you've had?
It's hard for me to analyze that. Um, Very naturally, of course, I think that when we're writing, there's some very deeply personal part inside of us that we're accessing and that we're giving shape to and we're giving form to. And that's a privilege, and also can be deeply scary as well.
Right.
But as a writer, those are the places that I want to go to, is the places that scare you, the places that are also uncomfortable. And sometimes, I might try to package it in a way that's slightly, with a lighter touch, or has a little sense of irony and humor. But I am very attracted to go to those dark places. And strangely enough, I've always been like that as a child. I always was a disruptor. I
Yeah.
was never satisfied with the status quo. So part of not being satisfied with the status quo was sort of becoming a bit of a rebel and rebelling against everything that I saw as being sort of safe and conformist. And the other half of that was trying to, okay, I know that this isn't what I want. This doesn't resonate with me. This kind of lifestyle, this kind of fairy tale, this kind of conditioning that we're sold in mainstream kind of narratives, this doesn't resonate with me. But then what am I about? What is my truth? Who am I, and what drives me, and what kind of life do I want to live? And then of course the whole big, what's the purpose of life?
Sure.
So these two forces kind of drove me for a lot of my life. And I was brought up in a mixed family. So my grandmother tried to convert me into becoming a Catholic, and it never resonated with me. I used to be terrified actually sitting in the back of the church, and no disrespect meant at all. It was
Mm.
just something that didn't resonate with me personally. My father was more into sort of Vedic knowledge, and because he's a scientist, he used to actually explain a lot of Hindu philosophy, philosophy from the Upanishads, but he used to relate it to science. So he made it kind of really interesting and relevant. But both of those, I kind of had to shake off and find my own path. And there was always something driving me. And when I was young, it was a kind of a madness, to be honest.
Sure.
I used to fling myself into situations, extreme situations that, I had no need to. Again, I grew up very privileged and secure and protected, and I took the opposite path in my life. I wanted to throw myself into very sort of almost edgy situations to sort of test myself. And I do feel that there was something that was driving me to the edge of myself. Spirituality, a lot of people end up turning to spirituality when something undoes them, when they hit a wall, when
Sure.
they end up experiencing an extreme event. Often, not always, often that happens. And for me, I was delving into spirituality even before I was diagnosed with cancer, because I know
Right.
that some people might think that, oh, you were diagnosed with an incurable cancer, multiple myeloma, and probably that's what made you change your perspective. But actually, I was doing the work. I was preparing the ground. I was tilling my inner soil much before that. And I can't explain it other than to say it was an inner calling. And you know what they say in Buddhism? They say that actually, I mean, if you look at the life of Buddha himself, Siddhartha, he had to experience the excesses of life before he could understand how hollow they were
Correct.
and how they didn't actually fulfill him. So, in a strange way, for me, being launched serendipitously
Yeah.
overnight into becoming a celebrity in India at the age of 16, and then experiencing this sort of unwanted or unwarranted as well attention for a decade, experiencing and tasting all of that, um, all of what fame and money and opportunity can provide. At the end of it, I concluded that it was very hollow. It genuinely did not satisfy me. Or if it satisfied me, it was very fleeting, right?
Sure.
It would pass very quickly. And then what do we do as human beings? It's never enough. It's never enough. I've done this project. Now I want to do a better project. And what is she doing? Or, I've got this house now. Now I want a bigger house. Now this person has a bigger house. We're always comparing ourselves. So the grasping mind is never satisfied. So that will never find you enduring, stable
Sure.
happiness or contentment.
Sure.
So I think because of all my life experiences, it actually set me up strangely and serendipitously. Life guided me gently in the direction of looking for more, looking for something deeper and more enduring, and asking those difficult questions.
Sure. So on that, on your whole cancer journey, Lisa, when I was reading your Yellow Diaries online, which became very popular, as you know,
Mhm.
there's one line that just kept on repeating itself and speaking to me, and it said, "It never occurred to me that I won't get better." What a
Yeah,
powerful line. Like that line, I know, and this is what we
yeah.
forget. Things happen to us and we don't remind ourselves, right? And in your case, you're saying it never occurred to me that I won't get better. Where did that come from? How did you have that in your being in the first place?
Again, I can't pinpoint a very logical reason, but I will share with you a little story that, again, life serendipitously, because I really do believe that serendipity um, has been one of the driving forces in my life. And let me just quickly explain. Serendipity is, it's a lovely word. It can be also equated with kismet, fate. There's lots of kind of uh, synonyms that you could find for it. But I love serendipity because I love words, obviously, because I'm a writer. But serendipity means finding something valuable that you did not realize you were in search of. And the word serendipity comes from Serendib, which is the original name of Sri Lanka, of Ceylon. And that name was given to Sri Lanka slash Ceylon slash Serendib by some Arab traders who ended up serendipitously on the island and obviously were taken with its riches. And it came to mean something very, very, I think, very magical. It's also because we're, some of us in society, because we're so left brain, right? We're so encouraged to be so left brain and logical that we're encouraged to sort of look at magic,
Yeah.
at serendipity, at coincidences as bah humbug, right? Whereas if we bring the two spheres of ourselves together, if we don't deny either side, there's a great alchemy that happens. And I feel that then life just flows beautifully, and you don't have to effort so much. But that's my own personal philosophy. But anyway, sorry, now I've completely gone off
Yeah.
track.
So
Oh yeah,
I,
so you said, where did that come from? Where did that
yeah.
come from? So um so I think it was about 9 months before I was diagnosed. My mom passed away. And needless to say, it was devastating. I think that, it's one of the biggest losses that anyone can experience, regardless of your relationship with your mother. It's a very,
Absolutely.
very deep
Absolutely.
bond, right?
Absolutely.
So I lost my mom I had been spending a lot of time in a place called Tushita up in Mikloidganj in Dharamshala, which is where the exiled Tibetan government is, and where there's some fantastic monasteries, and where His Holiness now lives. And I had benefited greatly from these 10-day retreats and introduction to Tibetan Buddhism. Now, I was really worried about my father. I'm an only child. My parents were absolutely one of those um, what we dream of soulmates, in every sense of the word. I was really worried. I was really worried that I would lose him after losing my mother. So I took him to Dharamshala. My 76-year-old father went up to the top of the mountains, checked him into Tushita. I wanted him to perhaps shift his perspective on life, because this really is a very mind-opening and eye-opening experience of 10 days. As is not a completely silent retreat, but it's an introduction also to Tibetan Buddhism, which is a mixture of meditation and talks, and in the beautiful grounds of and sacred grounds of the Himalayas. And where Tushita is based is actually where His Holiness the Dalai Lama first lived when he came to India from Tibet, when he fled. So that's very sacred ground as well. There's a kind of a beautiful feeling there. Even if you don't believe in these things, you just go there and you feel very restful. So I checked in my father into the 10-day Buddhist retreat. And I decided, because I'm an experienced meditator, I'll just take whatever other course is going on simultaneously. So it turned out to be a course on death and dying, but framed through the Buddhist perspective. Now, it doesn't sound like a very uplifting course at all, but the Tibetan Buddhists in particular are kind of renowned for their attitudes towards death. They don't treat it as a taboo. They don't treat it as something that's frightening, something, again, to be swept aside and never spoken of. They actually welcome it. They like to rehearse it. They like to meditate on it. Because really, anything that is hidden in the dark, in the shadows, has a kind of a power over us, doesn't it? But as soon as you bring something out into the light, it poof, it loses that dreadful kind of grip that it has on us. So anyway, so I went in there for 10 days, and it was actually a very lighthearted time, even though we were talking continuously about death. And it was, again, because of the attitudes. And of course, the other you could say incredible side effect of this is that it's only when you contemplate death that you end up living more fully. And I would encourage more people to do that, because rather than have to actually confront their death, as I did, that's another way of actually living a more, mindful and rich life. But anyways, so I'll never forget it. So one of the meditations, it was a guided meditation, and the nun had us close our eyes, and we visualized that we walk into a doctor's office and we sit down. And the doctor opens the door and comes in. He has this grim look on his face, and he says, "I'm really sorry to tell you, but you only have 6 months to live." Imagine that. Wow. This is a visualization. And then you take it from there. You visualize, I have 6 months to live. What am I going to do with those 6 months? And by the end of it, the meditation, when everyone slowly, gently open their eyes, and I sort of almost expected to see maybe pools of tears or, sadness, distress on people's faces. Everyone was beaming. Oh, everyone was blissed out. I was beaming more than anyone, because through this visualization, we imagined doing the things that are most essential to you, that give you nothing but bliss and happiness. And what a gift that is. And then the question is, once we come out of that, and once we had resettled ourselves, the question that came from the nun is, maybe you only have 6 months to live. Maybe you have 60 years. Maybe you have 6 more days. So why are you not living like that right now?
Yeah.
So in a strange way, the reason I'm sharing this story as well is that I'm sure that some part of this experience became embedded in me, and created the inner resilience
Sure.
and gave me the tools to face my own mortality in a way that might seem atypical, perhaps. But it was also that I had been equipped with the tools through a lot of relentless seeking, searching, questioning, meditating, etc., seeking out people who are much wiser than me. They had given me the tools to be able to find resilience inside me, to stop the storyline of fear, to be able to also have a relationship with fear. And that even to the extent that even when a doctor, even when a medical professional sat down opposite me and said, listen, this is really serious, you might die, I actually didn't
Mm.
believe him.
Yeah.
I did not believe him because I had also managed to find my way back to that small, quiet voice, whether you want to call it your intuition, whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it your higher self, whether you want to call it the universe, whatever label you choose, but that one small, quiet, guiding voice
Yes.
that I trust more than anything else. It's my true north compass.
And we have
And
to, right?
yeah, and everybody has it. I
Yes.
am not
Yes.
special by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
Anyone can access that
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah. We
And
can
that's, I think, what prepared me.
Yeah, sure. So is that what your inner compass that you have, that you trust and you listen to, which we forget? We don't, right? And this is the biggest lesson. One of the biggest lessons I've taken from my conversation right now from that response is I have
Mm.
to learn to listen to myself. Intuitively, we have to. There's instinct, compass. We need to. At this point, there's lots more coming. Audience, please stay on. There's a lot of engagement, Lisa. There's a lot of stuff that I just want to read out some messages.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I
I
would
will
love
try.
that.
Yeah, I will say hello to whoever is here. Raj, hi, Tulsi. Hello, Tulsi. Tulsi has an amazing story. Lisa, I will at some point introduce you. Tulsi was,
Mm,
she's one of her speakers. She was at 10 years old when she was with her went to Mumbai from England with her
mm.
parents and a brother, and she was involved in an air crash. She lost her parents, her brother. She survived with 45% burns to her face. She lives in London. What a story. And her story is
Wow.
incredible. Again, of resilience.
Hi,
Of
Tulsi.
yeah.
Hi, Tulsi. Yeah, it's such a pleasure that you're here.
Neetu Bhasin says, hi, ma'am. Ayanda says, hi. Hello to everybody. Selena says, hello. Nishikant finally says, hi. Selena, Sudhakar. Akshay saying, hello to you. Hannah, hello. Kim Scheller. Sorry, I'm just going through the names. Mo,
Yes.
Ashwar, Anirban Bhattacharya, Lisa the Warrior Queen, he says. Selena, Lisa, so good to see you on here. Suparna Paul, hi Lisa, ma'am. Nishikant say, a beautiful, most beautiful fighter, a perfect example of three B's: beauty, brains, and no baggage. Rani Deshmukh says, hello, both of you. Smita, I'm just going to read some questions, guys. There's lots of everybody.
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But hello, thank you. Thank you,
And
everyone,
lots, everyone, hello,
for
thank
tuning
you.
in to listen to my, humble tale.
Sarthak Chandra has a question. He says, how did you deal with people very close to you, parents, family, friends, being a rebel?
Well, I've written about that in depth in my book. Um, here's the thing, and I've changed my definition of a rebel. When I was young, I think it was also a lot of just youthful hormones and not knowing yourself, not being skilled enough to take these very strong emotions like anger at the system, at injustice, at people labeling me, and not being skillful enough to transform those emotions into something more useful. Um, but how did I handle everything? My parents themselves were rebels. I understood when I wrote my book that, look, it was a big deal, I would say, or it was quite earth shattering for my good Bengali Brahmin father to marry my mother, who's Polish, in the early 1960s. And they necessarily then moved to England and created a life apart from both of their traditions and backgrounds and had to reinvent themselves. And that is the ultimate rebellious act, you
Right.
know? And, there's one thing to being a rebel, and there's another thing to being mindful. And so I would say that my parents, I always knew I had a very, very close relationship with my parents. I had a little bit of a charged relationship with my mother in the way of sometimes daughters and mothers. Loved her to death, but I think we were very similar. And that's why we butted heads a lot. Whereas me and my father are very much sort of a daddy's girl. You might say that. So my parents were just sort of silently supportive. They understood I was so rebellious because, I stormed across the world, that they knew that there's sometimes the best thing you can do is sort of silent support. Just have your kids know that you're there for them, that you're their safety net. Obviously, you don't want them to go too far off track. But there was another very seminal life event that also changed things, and my parents and I were involved in a very serious car accident, which I wrote about in Close to the Bone. So I invite you also to read it. Um, and not because, I want you to read my story, but it's more because it's through a lot of very difficult experiences that I found myself, and it's
Sure.
through becoming broken,
Yeah.
that I become more beautiful. And there's a lovely Japanese tradition of kintokusuroi, which is repairing broken ceramics with gold. And I use that as a theme for my life, more beautiful for being broken, as opposed to being untouched or repairing something to make it look like nothing has ever happened. I don't understand that. I wear my scars very, very proudly. So being a rebel, here's the other thing. I think it's a much abused term. Truly being a rebel, because I have also been the beneficiary, or I've been mentored by some fantastic rebels in my life, and they're spiritual rebels. And sometimes being a rebel does not mean wearing cool clothes and kind of getting some
Yeah.
tats and some piercings and having people say you're so cool. Quite to the contrary, being a rebel means you will be an outcast, you will be an outsider, but it doesn't matter. It's finding that strength inside you to say, I am standing for something, I have a voice. Even if I fall, even if I fail, it doesn't matter. I'm not doing this for anyone else's validation. So there's sort of this tricky thing, because I think in today's world, people also, another much abused term is disruptor.
Oh, yeah.
Become very corporatized.
Yes.
I think, I mean, I've just been a natural disruptor, but I certainly don't go around and put it on my bio.
Right. Absolutely.
As,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen some people say, but like for instance, what is deeply disruptive in today's world? The greatest way you can be a disruptor.
Tell
What do
me.
you think? What do you think?
Oh, I think just reinventing yourself, or just being yourself and living your life the way you live, right? Like fully.
Exactly. Greatest way of being a disruptor
Yeah.
is, in fact, not even feeling that you have to confront or challenge on. It's living your truth,
Yeah.
and authentically, right? And also being happy. This world that we're living in is designed, and I'm talking again about mainstream
Sure.
society, designed to make everybody feel bad about themselves,
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
particularly women, men as well.
Yeah.
Stereotypes and cliches, and women are supposed to be like this, and you're supposed to have this kind of a lifestyle, you're supposed to look like this, you're supposed to dress like this, you're supposed to be like weigh this much, and your body's supposed to look like this. It's all designed to make you unhappy.
Sure.
And so the ultimate disruption is to be happy with yourself, no matter what you no matter where you are in your life. Doesn't mean that you're passive, doesn't mean that you don't have ambition and you don't want to achieve things. But you have what we have in this moment. We all, as human beings, have the potential to be happy right here and right now,
Thank.
not in some distant future, not comparing to a moment in the past, but right now. That is fully accessible to all of us. And that's the greatest disruption and the greatest spiritual uh, teaching as well.
Sure. So, Lisa, on that note, what about terms like vulnerability? We are so scared of exposing our scars, our feelings, being vulnerable. What I find about you that you're okay with that. You're okay to be vulnerable and say, you know what? this is happening to me, this has happened to me, and this is how I live my life. So what do you ask people, do you tell people, do you, I know that you don't advise people, that's one thing I really love about you, you share your stories, but do you think it will make us a better person if we are more open to being vulnerable?
Well, you have to look at this way, if you are not in touch with yourself, if you're not vulnerable, if you're not authentic in everything that you do, you're you're playing a role, and probably the role will keep changing. Now I'm in the office and now I have to play this role, and now I'm at home and I have to play the role that looks like this, and now I'm with my friends and this is a different role. You know what? It's exhausting.
Yes.
People are so cranky and exhausted out there,
Yeah, exactly.
you know and you create walls within yourself. And maybe you might find again fleeting moments of satisfaction and happiness, but I can guarantee when you're alone at night, it probably doesn't feel great.
Sure.
And you don't take my word for it at all. But I know that for me, it wasn't that I was always like this. I had to work hard to break down my walls, to break down my defenses that were put up due to trauma that happened when I was very young, from 16, this terrible car accident. And then,
Sure.
you know, serendipitously being thrown into Bombay and not really knowing anyone, not understanding anything, and wanting to be accepted for who I am, but then I was labeled as something else. And, all of that created sort of this armor around me. And I thought I have to be tough and I have to always appear tough. And believe me, since I started the work of letting that go, and it took a good decade to let it go, it wasn't easy work, it didn't happen
Sure.
overnight.
Yeah.
Never been happier. Nothing can affect me. It's like they look at, for instance, something that is that is really not, doesn't have softness in it. Like vulnerability has this implication that you can also flow. There's a softness, you can
Sure.
flow like water or like bamboo, right? When there's a strong wind, you don't break, you
How
just bend,
beautiful.
and then you realign yourself. That's what vulnerability does. It's the
Sure.
ultimate.
Sure.
So for me, vulnerability is my strength today. I don't know any other way of being. And I do encourage people. And a lot of it also has to do with our own self censorship, our own critic in our own head. It actually doesn't have to do with also a lot of people outside of us. Because one thing that I realized, this took me a while to realize this: people, they don't care. They're not paying attention. They're in their own heads. They're in their storylines. They're thinking about their own crap.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
keep thinking everyone's judging me. Oh my God, everyone's looking at me. No,
Nobody is nobody.
they don't care about you.
Yeah, I think I
That's
so agree.
a great relief,
I
actually.
I
What
agree.
we care about us, and often it's the inner
Yeah,
critic
yeah,
that creates the shame, that creates these boundaries. I can't do this. I don't want to try this. I'm scared. And you know what? Meditation for me has been the ultimate antidote, because it's not that those stories have stopped. It's not that I am not still fearful. It's not that I don't get scared, but it doesn't have a grip on me. It doesn't dictate what I choose to do. I can choose to actually see the fear. I can actually see it coming. I can actually invite it to sit down and have tea with me. But I can
how
say,
about
you're not going to stop me this time. And that is a skill, again, that is accessible to anyone and everyone.
in your book you talk about escapism, and I've read that about you, that you went through a long time in your life where after your mom's accident, I believe, where you ran away from life. Do you think if escapism is something that all of us do, which we do, and do you think the
Yeah,
reality comes to catch up on us at
absolutely.
some point?
And escapism can take other forms. Escape, like workaholic.
Yeah,
A workaholic is another form of escapism. Distraction, constantly being on your phone or on social media, or staring at a screen. That's just a way of escaping yourself. Because the most terrifying thing for a lot of people is just to sit with yourself in stillness,
sure, sure,
in solitude. And this time that we're going through has hopefully brought that message, loud and clear, and made it a little bit more accessible to more people. That the only way out of suffering and self censorship and all of the torture that we put ourselves through in our own head is actually sitting, not running away from it. And ultimately, you know what ends up happening? I'm a great nomad. I've lived in God knows how many cities now in so many years and constantly be on the go. And finally, I'm ready to stop, to say.
Wow.
I realized also in doing that, because I had the privilege of basically traveling nonstop and living in, cities everywhere from Mumbai to Paris to New York to LA to, all over the place, to Hong Kong. I realized wherever you go, your mind comes with you.
Yeah, true. We talk about this, we read about
Problems
it.
also come
Yeah,
with you. And
yeah,
that's also why I've seen a lot, over the last few years. We were living in Hong Kong, very yang city, and it's a lot of these very master of the universe type personalities. And we used to go on vacation, and even my husband was a little bit caught up with that. And I was watching him and observing him and trying to gently bring him back to himself, because sometimes your environment, obviously, as well, the field around you also starts influencing you. And I'm also vulnerable to that. But
sure.
we would watch people that we knew go on vacation, be sitting in a gorgeous beach in a Four Seasons somewhere, Koh Samui, as beautiful as it gets, and never enjoy themselves. And they're constantly thinking or on the phone, or their habits of having to, there's something called dominator culture,
Yep,
notion that human beings, and the relationships between human beings is all about domination. It's about, I have to dominate you, or you have to dominate me. To me, that's false. That's a human
ego.
but it's been propagated in our society. So I would see these, often men, not always, not exclusively, but these men come back from these vacations and they'd be more exhausted. And
Sure.
they never gave themselves a rest. They were always strung out. They were always in this fight or flight activated kind of, from your sympathetic nervous system. They were always primed to fight or flight, and the cortisol was raging through their body. And I had friends who would even drop dead of heart attacks.
Yeah, sure. Uh, Seems to be audio. You okay? Just say something.
Are we
In yeah,
audio?
yeah, just a little bit of a lag. I think that's okay. So in all this, no, there is a bit of a audio issue for some reason.
Okay, is it me?
No, it may be just the network. That's fine. That's fine. But Lisa, we also spoke about within all this chaos that's around us, how to create that space inside,
How to? Sorry, I didn't hear.
creating space within us with all the chaos.
Within us,
Yes.
the chaos. It's the work of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. And I wish that there was a simple shortcut. But it also depends on you and your personality. Now, I struggle because I am very sensitive to environments. I consider myself an empath, which means I also pick up on people's emotions
Sure.
and the general kind of temperature of the room, as in the general kind of feeling and emotional kind of temperature in a room. I pick up on that. And sometimes maybe that's also why I sometimes get drained. So I have to, protect my energy a little bit. I do some practices. I mean, definitely the meditation helps a lot. There's also a lovely practice called Ho'oponopono. And I've actually picked this up from a great spiritual teacher called Nitya Shanti. And I listen to him a lot and I do his courses. And he's wonderful. He's very accessible as well. So I
Yes.
encourage also people who are perhaps looking to dip their toe in to the meditation experience, maybe look up Nitya Shanti or join one of his courses. But he talks about Ho'oponopono. So basically, we're not always in charge of our outer environment. As much as I would love to go to Bali tomorrow and, just live in the rice paddy fields, and I'm sure I will one day soon, because that's an environment that resonates with me personally. Um, I don't have always the choice to do that. And that's also a little bit of escapism, isn't it? We can't always choose to be environments, and maybe that is the right choice to always be running away and to be always in a group of people that are also exactly like you. Spiritual work means always challenging yourself. So I think when you're on the spiritual path, the tricky thing is you will find that you'll be put into situations that will challenge you to see exactly where you are. You think that you've achieved this much. Now I'm going to put you into a group of very annoying people.
Yeah.
and see how you react. and, and it's true, that's where you can check up on where I am. But anyways, to get back to Ho'oponopono, it's more about creating the conditions inside yourself to create, a somewhat more serene, tranquil environment inside yourself. So this is just one little tip of many that are out there. There's many great teachers who can also advise you. But with Ho'oponopono, whatever thought comes into your mind, whatever idea, and I'm sure everyone, human being to human being, that we all have a gazillion thoughts running through our heads at any given moment. And I do, even though I've meditated for years now. It's not meditation isn't about shutting off your thoughts. It's about changing your relationship to your thoughts. So whatever thought comes up, I I'm bored. I really like bored of this now. Why won't she shut up? Why won't she talk about something interesting or give me some goss? I just as an example.
Sure.
You greet whatever arises within you with one of four phrases or all four phrases, and you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. So whatever arises, so it causes a relationship, it causes you distance from that thought, so you don't have to believe that thought. Bored, bored, bored. It's just a thought.
Thought.
Maybe you're not actually bored. So you
Mm,
greet, perhaps you choose to say, thank you. I see you. Thank you. But what it means is that you recognize a thought for what it is, it's a thought.
sure.
And it just pass and you don't have to believe it. Or something comes up like, I'm just not good enough. I don't understand why, why I can't write a Booker Prize winning book. What's wrong with me? You see that thought. You say,
Thank you.
you, I
Yeah.
love you. Please
Mm,
forgive me. Or you even say, or another way of approaching it is whatever comes up into your field of consciousness is also using wonder, a feeling of wonder. And you can actually just start out by closing your eyes and remember the last time you felt wonder, a place that gives you a feeling of wonder. For me, it's sitting in a mountain, and I have a specific kind of a place on a mountaintop, and I can hear the wind through the fir trees, and I can see, this incredible vista, and that evokes wonder. So then you take that wonder and then you take that feeling and you apply it to everything that arises in your field of consciousness. And that can also apply to interactions with people. If you
sure.
approach it with curiosity, you're just playing a role in life. You approach it with curiosity, even if somebody is aggressive, is mean. Now, I'm certainly not, trying to sort of imply that you should be naive, that you shouldn't actually also protect yourself from people who are toxic or anything like that. But even using wonder already creates, again, this incredibly compassionate barrier. The other thing that ends up happening is that when you work on yourself and you go through those and you start practicing compassion for yourself and you see the places where you are wounded, you will also recognize it in other people.
How
When
interesting.
they're mean and cranky and kind of off color with you, sometimes, it's not every time, but sometimes I will see it for what it is. Ah, they're having a really bad day. This is somebody who's mean. They have an unresolved issue. They
Sure.
have a really, really, really something terrible has happened in their life. And then I can react, not react, but I can choose. I can choose how I'm going to approach this. Reaction is just sort of like, it's not about a reaction because reaction is often like a trigger. I can choose how to meet that person. So these are a couple of just little tips that I really, really do apply in my everyday life. And I've really gone back to them. And in a strange way, this tumultuous time that we're living through has helped me to obviously reconnect with a lot of my practices that I think make me better and stronger ultimately. And sometimes we need to withdraw from life in order to do that. That's the
Yeah.
meaning of a retreat. We've
Right.
all been enforced kind of a retreat now.
Sure, sure. What we're just talking about, there's a lot of toxicity, right? There are wonderful, beautiful, magical people around, but there are also people who take it upon themselves to bring you down. That's their job. They think it's their job. So how do you, you can't manage. You are in an environment where we meet people constantly, but you are
Mhm.
sometimes forced to be around people who you may, I won't use the word not like, but they kind of offer negativity in your life. How do you then use this philosophy and detach yourself from that? And I'm sure you come across that as well. How do you manage this toxicity?
There's several ways, but I also go back to a lovely Buddhist teaching, which is that your greatest teacher is your enemy. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you can see everybody who comes into your field of consciousness as a teacher, particularly the toxic people, and actually say in your head, "Thank you." You know, here comes another teacher. You know, even if it's kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it takes the charge out of the interaction, and
Sure.
it takes. And who are we to judge? If
Right.
somebody is toxic towards us, I also tend to just move away. I engage. I mean, I'm a little fiery as well. If I'm provoked, I've got the Bengali blood, and you know, I can be a little bit righteous or self-righteous sometimes. I'm very much try to be on the side of what I believe is just. So there's things that trigger me. You know, people who I feel are not empathetic.
Yeah.
But then, I also see traces of the old me in that. There was a time when my empathy was also shut down.
Yes.
So on path, it's up to us to decide. And toxicity, I mean, there's another, of course, but the saying that, your own anger doesn't harm anyone except for yourself. It's like carrying poison in your throat, right?
Sure.
Like
Sure.
carrying a hot in your own body. So ultimately it's only affecting you. So the compassion has to start with yourself. When you value yourself, when you love yourself, and then you're put in a situation which is toxic, you will find ways, skillful ways of getting out of that situation. There's no
Sure.
need, like there's also say that you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink. So it's not that it's in us to look at someone and say, I want to heal you. You really got some problems. Let me
Yeah.
help you out. That's what I'm getting from you. It's not always the skillful thing to do. The skillful thing
Sure.
is manage the situation. It also takes a lot of skill to manage your own ego.
Correct.
Every moment there's a choice. Do I want to be right or do I want to be kind?
Yes.
And we also have a choice to be kind to someone who's being toxic to us.
Right.
And that's a great work. And why not? Why shouldn't we be kind? Why should we discriminate on the basis of whether somebody is nice to us or not? That's
Right.
not being not that's not practicing equanimity. Because there's four Brahma viharas they talk about, you know, and one is karuna, which is compassion, mudita, which is appreciative joy, there's upeksha, which is equanimity, right? Always, right? And karuna, and loving kindness, metta.
There's so much to learn from you, Lisa.
One
Oh,
head, I'm someone loving kindness. That's the ultimate. And here again, going back to rebellion, that's the ultimate disruption, isn't it, to the system?
yeah.
Because we've a system where it's believed again that like we have to fight with someone. If somebody's rude to me, you have to stand up to them and you have to sort of for your izzat and all of these false
Yeah.
notions. Sit with it. Decide for yourself. Don't take my word for it, but sit with it. Is that really the skillful way? Or is it an opportunity to grow through this interaction?
Sure. Fantastic. Lisa, I'm just going to read out some of the comments that we're getting because we've got a fantastic audience, like I said. We've got Selena Baron says, do you want to be respectable or respected? Your very own quote from Close to the Bone. Anjali Sharma says, you're full of inspiration. There is Madhu Ranjit Singh. She says, toxicity, well explained by Lisa. She's happy we asked that question. You've got a huge fan following who followed you here, Lisa.
So sweet.
They love you. They're very inspired. There's Joanna Aman, Sid. You've got people from Peru. You've got people from
Oh,
India,
wow.
from London. So it's
Thank
like,
you, everyone.
this is
So
amazing.
kind of you to join us on this little chat.
Amazing. Manoj
Thank you, Ra.
Gurswani. Oh, thank you. This is amazing. I
Great.
will not take too much of your
I
time.
mean,
I
I
know.
also want to say it's also about, I feel so comfortable, obviously, chatting with you. You're giving me the space to express myself. And I know that a lot of what I'm saying resonates with you, that
Absolutely.
you a life where you've made choices that sometimes go against the stream. And that's really commendable. And I think I naturally gravitate to people like that as well.
Thank you. And it's been quite a journey for all of us, right? And I've followed your journey for a long, long time. I mean, strangely, our paths didn't cross earlier. But for instance, Shilpa Shah Garden Saris, I was on that account for years in early
Yeah,
90s. I
crazy.
Aishwarya Rai, yeah. So it's been a long, long time. And your journey, almost like it's kind of crossed but never crossed. It was meant to
Yeah,
cross.
yeah.
Wow,
Never
it's
quite.
meant to.
Like, yeah.
It's very interesting. Now, I'm going to talk to you about something which is very close to my heart,
Mm.
which is about unconventional, right? And I love that word, but I don't like that word. I don't like to own that word, but I own that word, because unconventional means that you're not really normal, right? So we're talking about the whole LGBT, community, and I know you're an ally, but well, wow! I mean, I watched your movie "I Can't Think Straight," made by Shamim Sharif and
Mhm.
Alan. I remember watching Unseen World. I remember now you're in the Four Shots. You've always supported the community, or is it supporting the community, or just being who you are? Is that the narrative?
Um, See, I think the way that I've been brought up, both brought up and then, my life experiences have equipped me with a way that I literally don't see differences between people. I don't forget discriminate. It doesn't even occur to me again. On the basis of your sexual orientation, of your race, of how much you earn, of your status in society. I have friends who are from a plethora. I mean, I just literally doesn't occur to me. I just want to know who you are as a human being. So it just so happens, of course, working with Shamim and Hanan, who are dear friends, they're like family to me now. They're phenomenal people, and they've also been incredible mentors. Just so happened that I made these two beautiful films with them. It wasn't that I consciously chose LGBT themes. It was that I love the stories and I love the
Yeah,
characters.
yeah,
And I think, of course, again, as you pointed out, I'm an ally in every way, but I think beyond that identity, these were just beautiful characters. Their stories needed to be told. That's how I saw it. And I think the same even goes for Four More Shots. I love the character of Samara Kapoor because she's so complex. And, it's only now that in Hindi entertain, in let's say, I don't want to say Bollywood, I hate that word. In the entertainment world in Mumbai, that we're seeing more complex female characters. That was not the case when I first started out throughout the entire
yeah,
90s. And that's in fact why I left India. And that's also what led me also to working with Shamim and Hanan and some other great filmmakers like Deepa Mehta. And it's all based on the story. A great story is a great story. And
sure,
of course, having said that, finding your voice, as for instance in the case of The World Unseen, finding your voice as an Indian woman living during apartheid, who's married with children and who falls in love with a woman, is obviously going to
yeah,
lead to a really fascinating dramatic narrative. So these are stories that need to be told. I'm always on the side of very human stories that need to be told.
sure, yeah.
That's just what I gravitate towards naturally.
It's so
But I'm
wonderful.
very much an ally as well.
Yeah, you are. Is there a message you want to give to our friends who are watching from the LGBT community for Pride Month?
I just want to say that, live your truth. Every single moment that you're not living your truth is a moment wasted. And, in fact, everything that I've said before this about, these coping mechanisms to deal with toxicity, to deal with people's judgments, to deal with your own judgments are very useful, because ultimately, taking those steps into your own shoes, not anyone else's shoes, is the greatest and most satisfying journey that you'll ever take. And I love you all. Love is love.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful message. Lisa, judgment, people judge all the time, right? And I think that's one of the things that constantly comes through when I have conversations with people. People ask me, is there any way you can ask the people who are on your show and how do they feel about being constantly judged? Because you're celebrities, you're out in media. So do you feel
Yeah.
judged? And how do you detach yourself from that?
I get judged a lot, and a lot of it is just on the basis of, well, I mean, people didn't think I actually wrote my book.
Oh,
But it's funny because my image is different everywhere in the world, because I've worked significantly outside of India, and there people view me very differently than in India. So it kind of brings to mind this idea that there's no stagnant one image, and you have to find and connect with your inner truth, because everything else changes. Everything outside of ourselves changes, and people's judgment keeps changing. Oh my God, now you're in a hit show, and then everyone is like, yay.
yeah.
And I'm used to the ups and downs of the business. It honestly doesn't phase me. I don't get too attached to the ups. I don't get attached to the downs. Um, but yes, I would. It's really, it's such a personal journey. The journey out of judgment. It's really hard, to judge people who judge. Would also be maybe counterintuitive. I'm not saying I'm above judgment. I judge all the time, all day, all night. But I see those judgments, and again, I use Ho'oponopono. I recognize it. I'm able to like loosen the grip that it has over me, and that's huge progress. So that's all I have to say. People will judge because it's a conditioning,
Yeah.
but and you come across people who enlighten you, and I'm just always an optimist. I still believe in the good in people. I still believe in living open-heartedly, come what may, and living again through vulnerability, and living uncompromisingly.
There's a very interesting question that's come up, Lisa, and I don't know whether you'd like to answer, but let's give it a
Mhm.
try. People are very close minded about this LGBT community. So, how can we make them think that it's not a disease? Well, by making it mainstream, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
That's one part of it. That's one
yeah,
part of it.
yeah.
I can't relate to closed-mindedness of any level because it's just I can't relate to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's a tool. Entertainment can be a powerful tool. So I'm happy when entertainment is used as a tool, like in the case of Four More Shots, Please,
Yeah.
which is, the second season has been a huge hit, and rightfully so, and it's very entertaining. It's very frothy, but it really touches on some very, very relevant, serious issues. And one of many of the issues is this idea of the LGBT community. My character Samara coming out of the closet. So bringing that into mainstream consciousness, even if people are going to react, is a great step in the right direction. And I think that we just keep, we just keep driving it home relentlessly. That's all.
I say one story at a time to everyone. Films, the creative medium, our stories, they're all part of what we do. Now, there is someone who wants me to tell you, Smita Bobade, that she loves you and she wants to make sure that she tells Raga, tell her about her love. So I'm sure Lisa loves you back. There is a lot of comments. I may not be able to take all your comments because we are running out of time. But Lisa, poetry, love your
Hmm.
poetry. Is there anything you can share with us?
I'm sorry.
Is there anything you can share with us? Your poetry, if you have, or have I put you on a spot?
I mean, I'd have to look it up. I can't
Okay.
just, I don't just like, oh, I wish I could just
I know.
quote like Gulzar Saab and, Shairi. I wish I could. That's not the poetry that I write.
No.
So, no, but I mean, if anyone is interested, they can look up my poetry. It's on Instagram at Protest Poet. And I will be coming out with a book of poetry eventually as well.
Fantastic. Suparna Paul says, close to the bone is outstanding, and sometimes it makes me cry, and sometimes it brings tears in my eyes. So you've
Oh,
got,
thank you, Sapna. I mean, it is that kind of experience. I remember saying it about my film Water as well. It was, and I equate this with Close to the Bone. It was not because the audience, and it was a huge hit in North America, not India. We hardly ever brought it to India, but it really, really moved a lot of people. And afterwards, it was not about going up to the audience and audience members and saying, "So, did you like it? What did you think?" It was more like, "Did you cry?"
yeah.
And so many people said yes. And that was enough. That was enough to be said because it means that it opens a portal inside yourself. And I'm so deeply humbled and honored that it did that for you, Suparna. So thank you.
Wonderful. I was in New Zealand at that time when Water was released. I still remember a bunch of us went and there was silence after the movie.
Mm.
And my friends, the Kiwi friends, asked me, "Is it for real? Is it fictional or this really happens?"
Really? They thought it was
Yeah,
fictional?
like this, they couldn't relate to it. Like this really happens, and it made me think as well and reflect. But so many, I think we can go on and on. I hope the audience has seen the other side of Lisa Ray, this warm, super funny, engaging, intelligent writer, and I hope we all pick up her book close to the bones and everything that she stands for. Lisa, it has been wonderful to have
Thank
you on the
you.
show. I
Thank you,
really love
Raga. Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, and
Love
thank you
it, love.
everybody.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Appreciate always your support and conversation. I love great conversations like this. And again, keep living your best life. I mean, just live your authentic life. That's all you have to do. Let's simplify now.
I know, I love
Life is
that.
so complicated.
I know, live your truth, isn't it? It's so simple if you think about the philosophies of
So
life.
simple, but so hard.
It's hard, but thank you for simplifying it for us, Lisa, today. And I must thank Nicola Fenton, a co-founder of Speaking Minds, who is in the background and making sure that our
Thank
faces
you,
are
Nicola.
and thank you
Keeping
to the
everything
team.
moving smoothly.
Thank you all at Speaking Minds. Thank you, audience. Love you all. Come back anytime you want. Feedback is welcome at Speaking Minds Global or at Totally Out Now. I will see you back on Friday with our speaker Ila Arun, 8:30 India time, 4 p.m. UK time. Lisa, I love you so much. Thank you for this. I have learned so much from this conversation personally.
Okay.
So thank you.
I just enjoy sharing. That's all.
Love to your
Ciao.
family and have a good time in
Thank you.
Singapore.
Bye. Bye.